Hi, this is Malik Jupiter. And this is going to be part three to the tissues. I promise this is going to be the last part, though. Right? So, when we're looking at fluid connective tissue, there's going to be two types of fluid connective tissue. Okay? We're going to have blood, right? And we're also going to have lymph. Okay? So, both of these, blood and lymph, they consist of cells within a liquid matrix, right? So blood and lymph are our fluid connective tissues. They're going to contain, distinctive collections of cells, right, in that fluid matrix. And that fluid matrix is going to be called a plasma. So blood contains these right here. It contains red blood cells, okay? Red blood cells are also called erythrocytes, okay? And so they account for almost half of the volume of blood. So red blood cells transport oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. Okay. We also have white blood cells. White blood cells are called leukocytes, right? And they include neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, lymphocytes, and monocytes. And so white blood cells, they help protect the body against infection and disease. And also within blood, we have platelets, right? Platelets are called thrombocytes, okay? And thrombocytes are these tiny membrane enclosed packets of cytoplasm. It contains enzymes and special proteins. And so platelets, they function in the clotting response that seals breaks in the blood vessel walls, okay? And so the extracellular fluid of like this fluid connective tissue, it includes three major subdivisions. All right, so we have plasma, right? We have interstitial fluid, and we have lymph. Okay, it's going to be the extracellular fluid of the fluid connective tissue, right? These are going to be the subdivisions, right? And so plasma is normally confined to the blood vessels and contractions of the heart, keeps it in motion. So in tissues, filtration moves water and small solutes out of capillaries and into interstitial fluid, which bathes the body cells basically. And so the major difference between plasma and interstitial fluid is that plasma contains a large number of suspended proteins. However, lymph, on the other hand, it forms as interstitial fluid and then enters lymphatic vessels, right? And these are small passageways that return to the cardiovascular system. Okay. So that's going to be our fluid connective tissue. We have blood and lymph. Okay. So if we're moving further, looking at the other type of tissue, which would be supporting connective tissue. Okay. Supporting connective tissue. And so there are two types of supporting connective tissue, right? Cartilage and bone, right? They provide that strong framework to support the rest of the body, right? And so in these connective tissues, the matrix contain numerous fibers and in some cases deposits of insoluble calcium salts. So the matrix of cartilage is a firm gel that contains complex polysaccharides, right? So let's hit on cartilage first, right? So the matrix of cartilage, right? It's going to contain, it's going to be a firm gel. That contains this complex polysaccharide. That's going to be called chondroitin sulfates. Okay, that's what that complex polysaccharide is going to be called. All right, and these sulfates, they form complexes with other proteins that form these proteoglycans. So these then form proteoglycans. Okay, so cartilage cells, right? Cartilage cells are called chondrocytes. Okay. And these are the only cells within cartilage matrix. Okay. And so if we look at this image right here, right, where I'm pointing to right here, the chondrocytes, they live in a small chamber known as the lacunae. Okay. The physical properties of cartilage depend on the composition of its matrix. And we also have collagen fibers that's going to provide cartilage with its tensile strength, right? And the extracellular fibers and the ground substance will give cartilage its flexibility and resilience. However, cartilage is going to be avascular. Right? It's going to be avascular. Okay. And that's because those chondrocytes will produce a chemical that discourages the formation of blood vessels. So all nutrients and waste products must diffuse through this matrix. Okay. And so you can see this is going to be the matrix, right? Where all the nutrients and waste must diffuse through. So we also have that fibrous perichondrium, right? Looking at it, this fibrous perichondrium right here. You can see it right here. The fibrous perichondrium. And it usually separates the cartilage from like the surrounding tissue. And the perichondrium, it contains two distinct layers that we can see. We should be able to see it right here. It's going to be that fibrous layer and then that cellular layer. Just looking. I thought it was going to be on there. That's fine. Okay, well, I'll be able to show you actually on another image. Okay, that's fine. No worries with that. Okay. But just know that the perichondrium has both a fibrous layer and a cellular layer. Okay. There are different types of cartilage, right? There's the hyaline cartilage. Hyaline cartilage that we see, that's the most common type. It's going to be contain that matrix that's going to contain closely packed collagen fibers. Although it's tough and somewhat flexible, this is also the weakest type of cartilage, right? So it's the most common, right? Have closely packed collagen fibers. Okay. It's going to be the weakest type of cartilage. Okay. And so examples of hyaline cartilage in the adult body, that's going to be like the connection between the ribs and the sternum. But supporting cartilage also is going to be along the conducting passageways of the respiratory tract. And we're also going to find it at the articular cartilages. They're going to be covering the exposing bone surfaces within the synovial joints, such as like the shoulder. Okay. We also have elastic cartilage. Okay. That's going to form the external flaps of like the auricle or the external ear. Okay. It's also going to form like the epiglottis and the auditory canals, right? The epiglottis is going to be in the throat region, and the auditory canals is going to be the airway to the middle ear, and we'll get into that. But the elastic cartilage is really just going to contain numerous elastic fibers that make it extremely flexible. Okay. So it's going to have numerous elastic fibers. Okay. And then, of course, we have fibrous cartilage, right? Or fibrocartilage. It has little ground substance and may lack a perichondrium. And the matrix is dominated by collagen fibers, right? So these fibrocartilaginous pads, they lie in areas of high stress, right? So they're in high stress, right? Areas such as the intervertebral discs, right, between the spinal vertebrae. Also, you're going to find this fibrous cartilage is going to resist compression, right? It's going to absorb shock and is going to prevent damage from bone to bone contact. Okay. We have bone. Bone is another supporting connective tissue, right? Bone is the second type of supporting connective tissue after cartilage. So there's going to be significant differences between bone and cartilage, right? So bone, I want you to be aware, is going to be called osseous tissue, right? So osseous tissue. That's what bone is called, osseous tissue, okay? And so it's different from cartilage, right? So, and I give you these differences right here in this table, right? The comparison of the structural features of cartilage and bone, right? So approximately 1/3 of the matrix of bone consists of collagen fibers, and the rest is a mixture of calcium salts, primarily calcium phosphate with a lesser amount of calcium carbonate. However, so this combination gives bone remarkable properties, right? So by themselves, calcium salts are strong, but rather brittle. Collagen fibers are weaker, but relatively flexible. So in bone, the mineral salts or the minerals are organized around the collagen fibers. So this results in a strong, somewhat flexible combination that is resistant to shattering. Okay. So when we're looking at this image right here, we look at the general organization of bone. Okay. So the lacunae contains the osteocytes or the bone, right? So if we look right here at the osteocytes and the lacunae, they're going to contain those osteocytes, right? The lacunae is going to contain the osteocytes, and they're often organized around blood vessels that branch through the bony matrix, right? So because diffusion can't occur through the calcium salts, right? These osteocytes communicate with blood vessels and with another through like these slender cytoplasmic extensions, right? And these extensions run through the canuliculi, right? So we can see here, like these extensions right here, they're run through there. And that's going to be for, right, the exchange of materials between the blood vessels and the osteocytes. So there's going to be two types of bone, right? So we're going to have spongy bone, okay? And we're going to have compact bone, okay? Compact bone is going to contain blood vessels trapped within the matrix, right? So compact bone has blood vessels. Spongy bone, right? So spongy bone does not. No blood vessels. Okay. So except all at the joints, all bone surfaces are covered by a periosteum, right? And that's composed of an outer fibrous layer and an inner cellular layer. The periosteum helps attach a bone to surrounding tissue and to tendons and ligaments, but the cellular layer functions in bone growth and repair after injury. Okay. And so this is what I was mentioning, actually. That fibrous layer right here, right? That fibrous layer of the periosteum. Okay. So moving from the supporting connective tissue of bones, because we'll get into that a little bit more, we want to look at the membranes, right? So there are a few different type of membranes that we will look at, okay? So epithelia and connective tissue combine, right, to form membranes. And these membranes cover and protect other structures and tissues. Okay, so a membrane consists of an epithelial sheet with an underlying connective tissue layer. And there's going to be 4 types of epithelial membranes. We're going to have mucous, serous, cutaneous, and synovial. So the mucous membrane, right? We're going to start here at the mucous membranes. They form a barrier that resists the entry of pathogens, right? So they form a barrier that resists entry of pathogens. Okay. So the epithelial surfaces of the mucosa, they're going to be moist because they are lubricated by mucus or like other glandular secretions or by fluids such as urine or semen. Okay. So examples of the mucous membranes are going to be like the simple columnar epithelium of like the digestive tract. We have the stratified squamous epithelium of the oral cavity and the transitional epithelium found in most of the urinary tract. Okay. That's where you're going to find mucous membranes. And again, mucous membranes are going to be those moist, right? They're going to be moist and they line passageways that open to the exterior of the body. Okay. Again, they're going to be moist and line passageways that open to the exterior of the body. Okay. Serous membranes. Serous membranes consist of a mesothelium. Okay. And they're going to be supported by a thin layer of areolar connective tissue that's going to be rich in blood and lymphatic vessels. The 3 types of serous membranes are going to be the pleura, the peritoneal, and the pericardial. Okay. So the pleura is going to line the pleural cavities and cover the lungs. Okay, we have the peritoneum. That's going to line the peritoneal cavity. All right, and cover surfaces of the enclosed organs. Okay. We're also going to have the pericardium. And that's going to line the pericardial cavity and cover the heart. Okay. We also have the cutaneous membrane. Okay. And the cutaneous membrane is basically, really it's the skin, right? It covers the surface of the body, right? So it's going to cover surface of body. Okay. And so unlike the serous and the mucous membranes, the cutaneous membrane is going to be thick, relatively waterproof, and usually dry, right? Because the skin is the first line of defense against environmental pathogens. Okay, so the cutaneous membrane will cover the body surface. Last but not least, we have the synovial membrane. Okay, and so the synovial membrane lines and lubricates joint cavities. Okay. Joint cavities. Okay. So bones that connect one another at joints, these are called articulations, right? So joints that permit significant movement are surrounded by a fibrous capsule and contains a joint cavity lined with the synovial membrane, right? And so this synovial membrane consists of an areolar tissue covered by an incomplete superficial layer of squamous or cuboidal cells. But it doesn't have a basement membrane. Its cellular layer is incomplete. It has gaps between adjacent cells, right? But the secretory cells regulate the composition of the synovial fluid within that joint cavity. And so the synovial fluid lubricates, again, the cartilages in the joint, and it distributes oxygen and nutrients and cushions shocks, right? Such as like the knee, right? Around that knee area, okay? So we have muscle tissue, right? Another type of tissue in the body. Muscle tissue is capable of powerful contractions, okay? So again, muscle tissue is capable of powerful contractions, okay? So our bodies have three types of muscle tissue: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth, okay? Skeletal muscles, right, they move or stabilize the position of the skeleton. They also guard entrances and exits to the digestive, respiratory, and urinary tracts. It also generates heat and protect internal organs, right? Cardiac muscle, right, that's going to help with circulating blood, right, and then that maintenance of the blood pressure. Whereas smooth muscle, right, that's going to function to move food, right, urine, and reproductive tract secretions. It also is going to control the diameter of respiratory passageways and regulate the diameter of blood vessels. Okay, so those are going to be the three types of muscle tissue in the body. And then we have neural tissue, okay, or nervous tissue. Okay, so most of the nervous tissue in the body, roughly 96%, is concentrated in the brain and the spinal cord, and it controls the centers for the nervous system, right? So nervous tissue contains two basic types of cells. We have neurons and we have neuroglia, okay? So a neuron is a nerve cell, and it transmits electrical impulses along their plasma membrane, right? So we'll write that out too. So we have a neuron, right? That's a nerve cell, right? And it transmits electrical impulses along the plasma membrane, whereas neuroglia, right, the other type of cell that's in the nervous system, right, or the other type of nervous tissue, neuroglia is going to, neuroglia is a general term for several different kinds of supporting cells. So it's really just supporting cells of the nervous system. Okay. And nice little note about nervous tissue or neurons is neurons are the longest cells in the body. Right? They're going to be the longest cells. And you can see this neuron right here. It's a pretty long cell, right? So that's just a brief overview of tissue part 3. Okay, thank you guys.